Good morning. Welcome back to Scott, Arkansas, just outside of Lafayette. I should say Scott, Louisiana, just outside of Lafayette, Louisiana. I'm meteorologist Mike Seidel, thinking about Arkansas, parts of Mississippi, western Tennessee. We have the flash flood watches up, and now Tropical Depression Delta, bringing rain and some wind there, but the wind's primarily gusting 30 or 35 miles an hour. Here in Louisiana, we've had upwards of 580,000 customers without power. Now it's down to 560. They're going to get the power back on as fast as they can. This is Pecan Island. This is down on the Gulf Coast, about an hour south of here, Vermilion Parish. And this is not far from the water. And you can see from the drone video, a lot of water in the streets with that surge and all the rainfall, a lot of wind. You can see a bulldozer out there trying to do some cleanup. But again, some of these coastal areas, and again, the same areas that got hit hard by Laura, Holly Beach and over there in Cameron Parish, taking those 80 to 90 mile an hour plus winds again with Delta. Well, we're back here in Scott. We're joined by Robert and Susan James, who live in this house that now has a tree on it. Tell us a little bit about what happened with those winds last night after the rain ended.
Well, after the rain ended, at first it didn't seem like it would be a very serious storm. We were just kind of doubting, the seriousness of it. But when the wind came in, it came in packing a wallop. It was very strong. It was howling. We weren't here at home. We were with the in-laws. And as you can see, we have 2 trees actually down on the house. The roof is only maybe 8 months old. We had problems earlier in the year. Back in November, we had just a basic storm that came through and dropped the tree on the other side. But we put this metal roof on, and it seemed to have held up much better than the shingles had. We were pretty amazed, but we have I have these classic cars here. It's done pretty much a number on them, but truth be told, I think that the trees actually would save the house, because it's resting on the cars. They're a total loss. But we were in the process actually earlier in the week of taking these trees down, and the window of opportunity just closed on us. We were unable to get them all cut down in time.
So you've got 3 Lincolns, a Monte Carlo. I think this Lincoln here, the 76 Lincoln, is in the worst shape because of the hit. It got a big hit in the front.
It's pretty much tilted to where it's standing up in the back. It's a total loss in the front, and it was probably the more valuable car of the 4. But it's just one of my biggest pastimes was rebuilding these Lincoln Continentals, and we just didn't have an area to put them in. And it's like I said, window of opportunity. When things start going, it happens really quick. Yeah.
So what's your plan now today? Are you going to get the chainsaws out?
I have many people that have offered to come and help. That's just the nature of everyone around here down south in Louisiana.
Help each other.
Very resilient. We're used to the storms coming through, and there's no shortage of helping hands. Family members, family and friends. And especially these days that you can get on Facebook and everything. There's just people coming out of the woodwork that want to help, and we're thankful for that. So we're going to try to get back to a little sense of normalcy and hopefully back to work on Monday.
And I get the sense that you do the talking in the family.
Oh, just a bit.
Most of the time.
I do the talking, but she's the one that takes care of all the business.
Well,
she's actually the boss of the house.
Okay, we're glad to have you. We're glad you're okay. The roof looked like it's okay. You get the cars fixed.
Yeah, sure. It's all superficial. That's all materialistic. No family, friends hurt. That's the biggest part, as long as everyone's safe.
Exactly. Okay, Dr. Greg Postel, once again, that's the good news. And we emphasize the fact that the winds were stronger after the rain ended. That's when we had that 75-mile-an-hour gust. It was 8:04 Central, and most of the rain had long since moved out of the way. Not your typical landfall. Usually you have squalls on the other side and the wind, but it was dry when these winds hit.
Yeah, this is more characteristic of your late season landfall.
Weather Channel meteorologist Mike Seidel, he's in the town of Scott, just to the west of Lafayette, and he joins us now live with a look at the damage caused by Hurricane Delta there. Hey, Mike.
Hey, Felicia, and good morning here from just on the other side of Lafayette. We're about an hour to the east of Lake Charles, and this hackberry tree came down on the James residence. We'll talk to them again a little bit later on, but it fortunately has not done a whole lot of damage to the roof. In fact, this is a new roof from last November from a thunderstorm, and they put on the aluminum roof, which is very common in areas where you have problems with wind, hurricane zones, even out through Tornado Alley. They're much more, they're less susceptible to the wind versus the tried and true shingle roof. And the cars, this is a 77 Cartier, Lincoln Cartier. It's got about 19,000 miles on it. Can you imagine? 19,000 miles on a car that's about 34 years old, or 44 years old. It got hit pretty hard by the tree. In fact, it probably braced the tree from hitting the home as hard. They'll have to get the tree off fast. There's another tree you can't see in the back. That has not done any damage. It's a much smaller tree, but these cars have gotten damaged from the wind. I want to take you back to yesterday. Now, we got most of the rain before about 7 to 7:30 local time. And we're talking about 3 inches of rain, sheets of rain. You can see the wind here gusting upwards of 50 miles an hour. But it was after the rain that we had our strongest wind gusts. That was the case in many areas on this side of the storm. Even over towards Iberia, where they gusted at 90 miles an hour, we had our peak wind gust to 75 miles an hour at the nearby Lafayette Airport at 8:04 Central, and the rain had stopped. So it was not your typical landfall. But again, as Dr. Postel has mentioned, it is October after all. Once the rain ended, we got the winds mixing down, and boy, we were at the hotel, and for 3 or 4 hours, it just would not stop the howling. You could actually hear things shaking, and outside the industrial buildings outside, you could hear things banging nonstop, Felicia. So it was quite a racket there until about 9:30, 10 o'clock last night when the winds finally died down below 40 miles an hour. But the winds did their damage. As far as power outages, here in Lafayette Parish, about half the parish is without power. We have power here, and Felicia, luckily, we kept our power at the hotel. And I was kind of surprised with those kind of winds and that kind of noise. I thought for sure those lights would go out, but they didn't. And we could sit there all night and watch the Weather Channel.
Yeah, perfect way to spend the night when you're in the middle of a hurricane. Thanks so much, Mike. Yeah.
Well, we also have cleanup underway east of here. It has head to Scott, Louisiana, where Mike Seidel is. And you, too, had quite a bit of a wind chill last night. You had gusts, what, up to 70, 75 miles per hour, Mike?
Yeah, 75, not as strong as there. And you had the strongest winds for a longer period of time in that eye wall. So you have more trees down than here in Scott. We're just on the west side of Lafayette by about 15 minutes. Let's bring in the police chief, nice enough to come back after the storm, Police Chief Chad Leger, right here in Scott, and tell us a little bit about what has happened around town, again, referencing the tree power line and tree house damage.
Well, here in South Louisiana, we face usually more water damage than wind damage, and unfortunately, we have more wind damage than water. So we have a lot less flooding in our homes, but on the other hand, we have a lot of trees that are down. Unfortunately, those trees have fallen on the power lines, and we're probably looking at about 90% of our city is out of power, and we're fortunate our electrical companies are working very hard to get it back up, but it's going to be a while.
Yeah, 52% of the parish was without power just a little while ago. What's the timeline on getting these trees off the roadways? Well, you did a lot of that last night once the winds died down, but do you still have issues with roads?
Well, you're correct. We did get on the streets at about 9 o'clock last night when the winds, sustained winds were below 40 miles per hour with our Public Works Division and with tractors, and we cleared pretty much all the streets, taking the trees off of the streets to make it safe for people to pass and for our emergency responders to respond if need be as well. So we're still working on that aspect of things, and we're just waiting on the power companies because they have the specialized training to be able to cut down the trees that are on the lines.
And compare this cleanup to the cleanup of Laura 6 weeks ago.
There's no comparison. We didn't have the wind damage. We didn't have the trees. We had a little bit of water from Laura, but it drained very quickly. So we didn't lose power. We were very, very lucky with Laura.
A big difference here.
Yes.
But no reports of any injuries?
No, we have no hospitalization complaints or emergency calls that we have to make for our police or fire. So we're very blessed on that part.
Okay, Chief Leger, thanks for joining us. Thanks for the update. Glad everybody's okay. Get the trees cleaned up, and we'll be back to some fine Louisiana living down here.
We're ready for festival season.
There you go. Okay. Thanks, Chief. Once again, the sun is out, Dr. Postel. The dew points come down a little bit, and the winds right now are west and northwest at about 10 miles an hour. A complete reversal of last night after landfall. And then after the rain ended, that's when we had the 75-mile-an-hour gust.
Well, Mike, thank you very much. I want to keep an eye on some of the thunderstorms that are now moving across
The Channel meteorologist Mike Seidel is in the town of Scott, just to the west of Lafayette. And Mike, we've heard that there have been a couple of waves of wind with the storm. One coming in with the eye wall itself, but then even on the underside where there was not much weather, there was a very strong wind. And I'm wondering if that matches up with your experience there.
Yeah, exactly, Carl. It was really amazing. This is not your typical landfall. As Dr. Postel mentioned earlier, you get into the fall and you often see this. We had most of the rain between about 2 and 7 p.m. We had 3.5 inches. And then the winds, the strongest winds occurred after the rain stopped. We had a hurricane-force wind gust clocked at 75. That was at 8:04 at the airport in Lafayette. And that was about 45 minutes after the rain ended. And then it just rocked and rolled for several hours. And a couple of nice friends we met here. This is Robert and Susan James. They own the house here. The tree fell on their cars in the house, but you weren't home. Tell us a little bit about what happened last night in your lives.
Well, just a little bit displaced. We went to a family, a little bit more of a sturdier place to be because, you know, when the Weather Channel says don't stay in a mobile home, you don't stay in a mobile home. And this is exactly the result, you know. Just anything can happen, you know. It's weather, and you can't never mistake it for a moment. The weather seemingly was not anything as bad as what we were thinking earlier on. But as the rain passed, as you said, when the rain passed and the gusts started coming in, it was definitely stronger than Laura.
Very strong, yes.
We've got a lot more structural damage. It was a very dry storm, but I mean, it's just a lot of wind damage. And here, as you can tell, on our brand new roof, it's basically only about 8 or 9 months old from a previous storm. It did a little bit of damage, but you know, we're still standing above ground.
What about your classic Lincolns back here? Tell us a little bit about how they survived or didn't.
It doesn't look like they survived very well, but I mean, these cars here I've had for quite some time. I restored them. I had them fully restored, and actually, it's probably the only thing that saved the house. If if it hadn't, I think the tree actually fell, just kind of feathered down, and the car supported it. But they took the brunt of the actual tree falling. But I think that they actually saved us. But that's material things, you know.
Right.
We're very resilient down here. We just that can all be replaced. That can all be fixed. You know, I mean, it may not be original, but you know, it's still a classic. And anyway, it's just something that I hobby with, you know. But all in all, it's just we're grateful to be standing above ground. You know, the family's all good. Lots of friends and family that come in to help. You know, this community here and anywhere down south, you find the same thing. All we do is work hard and eat a lot. You know, that's what we do. We're all about food down here. I'm sure you know.
Down here is good.
But that's the basic thing. You know, everyone is ready and willing to come out here and help. And that's the fortunate thing about being down south. People are very friendly.
Yeah, we appreciate your time. Thanks for the
and we appreciate
your story.
You. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, and I'm glad you heeded that advice. Get out of the mobile home. Let's go to Paul Goodloe, about 35 miles to our west towards Lake Charles in Jennings, Louisiana. And Paul, I could hear the sound of chainsaws this morning, which is often the sound you hear following hurricanes and tornadoes.
Chainsaws, heavy equipment.
And Lafayette, you're not far. You're in Scott, Louisiana. I mean, what was your experience like there? From the people that we talked to, especially in Lafayette, they said the winds were so much worse with Delta than what they experienced in Lafayette with Laura.
They were. It was like a flip-flop. During Laura, they had 8 or 9 inches of rain. This time they had about 3.5, still a daily record. But the peak wind gust this time was 75 at the airport. And the difference, too, is the winds lasted longer. And they also came in after the rain ended. We've been talking about that all morning with Dr. Postel and Carl, that we got the strongest wind gust after the rain ended in this part of Louisiana. With that said, we've seen some improvement in that power getting back on. This morning, I checked power outages in Louisiana about 8 o'clock. 580,000. Now it's down to 520,000. So they've gotten about 10% of the power back on in about the past 4 hours. So they're making inroads. The winds have died down quite a bit, so you can get those bucket trucks up. But it's all about trees down on power lines. In this case, it's a hackberry tree down on the James home they've been in for 30 years. They evacuated because, as we tell you, get out of a mobile home. They're okay. The roof is okay. It's a new roof, by the way. It was put on in November, and so the roof's fine. The only real damage, and it can be fixed, these classic cars, a 77 Lincoln Cartier. We've got a couple Lincoln Continentals and a Monte Carlo. So, Julie, they'll have to work on the cars, but the house looks like it's in pretty good shape. They're fine, and thankfully they're slowly getting the power back on across the state of Louisiana. But another tough couple of days for a state now that's had 4 landfalls this season.
Yeah, just unprecedented. All right.
equipment.